This week we're going to talk about product knowledge. And to get started, I'm going to do something a little different than I've been doing. I'm actually going to start by kind of just making an example of a couple different situations, and then we'll apply it to fire alarm. So the first part of the example I want to talk about is we all know those good old boys that just kind of work on everything themselves. They fix whatever they have. They might not be up on the latest and greatest, but they can keep that old truck running for forever. They build that race car by themselves. They've got their own shop in their backyard. For me, one person I can think of that I know who's like this is my father-in-law. Go over to his house and he's got all these tractors parked in the backyard. He's got an old classic truck that the boys call his race truck, and he works on his trucks and he keeps his wife's car going. When other people in the family or other friends of his need help, he can always help. But he's never ever done this professionally. He's never been a mechanic in a shop. He's never worked at a dealership, never received some kind of training for it. He can just do it. He's a shade tree mechanic. His job right now is he's a foreman at a pipe fitting yard. And before that, he worked in residential construction, doing trim work and other landscaping things, just kind of whatever the contractor needed at the time. Sometimes he was just sweeping the floor. If anything ever goes on, lawnmower breaks, go-kart breaks, something's going on in the truck, I can always call him and ask for help. But I've got a pretty new truck, so if he comes over and we're looking at the truck and it's got a lot of these new electronics on it, and he looks at it and says, I don't know much about that. I don't think I can help you. I'm not going to think any less of him. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, you should know. How do you work on all this stuff and you don't know how this stuff works? No, he's just a shade tree guy that works on old stuff and just does a good job. But then if I go and take my truck to the dealership, be like, hey, it's doing this weird thing. I can't figure it out. My father-in-law can't figure it out. I want y'all to figure it out. And if they walk around, they pop the hood and they look at it and they tell me the same thing he tells me, then I'm going to have a very different reaction because I have a very different expectation of a dealership. So when you go to a dealership, like say maybe you're rich and you drive a Cadillac, and Mr. Joe Wheeler here is your certified technician. He's going to be working on your Cadillac, and you go up to the dealership and he walks around and looks at the car and it's making some funny noise and he's like, I ain't never heard a noise like that before. And he's like, I don't know what to do about that. Sorry, I can't help you. You're going to be like, what kind of dealership is this? What kind of company is this? What's this place trying to pull? Because when you go there, you expect him to know everything. You expect them to be like just the gods of Cadillacs. Like if there's a Cadillac problem, they need to know how to work on it because they're the dealership. Well, before I worked in fire alarm, I worked at a Ford dealership. And I learned some stuff about their training program, about their product knowledge that actually really surprised me. One of the things is they don't just like magically send all of their technicians off to factory training first day. They actually make you come in and work at bottom level. So you're sweeping the floor, changing the oil, doing the tire work, stuff that doesn't require car-specific knowledge. And they've got some dusty old 1990s computer sitting in the corner that has a bunch of manuals on it, has a bunch of product data, and maybe a handful of videos that they expect you to go over and start taking some initiative and learning from yourself. Another thing about working there, the employees aren't paid by the hour out in the shop. They're paid by the job. So if they're not working on a car, they're not actually earning money at that minute. So going over to that computer and learning took not only some initiative, but it took some extra drive because you're not being paid to do it. What you're doing is you're putting work in so that they'll give you bigger and better jobs that'll pay more and more. But they won't give those jobs to you unless you start learning about it. And there's also an expectation in those dealerships, if you're ever talking to one of their customers, they don't want you to not know things. They don't want you to be like, oh, I don't know about that. Oh, I haven't been to that training. They have the employer and the customer both have a very high level of expectation from the technicians who are out in the shop at these dealerships. Now, when we kind of take this example and apply it over to Pyrotex, Pyrotex is not a shade tree company. Pyrotex is more of the dealer level company. We're a distributor of Honeywell fire alarm systems, and we're actually an elite level distributor. So that means our customers have a high example or a high expectation of us, and we need to go out on job sites and know what we're talking about. Now, we don't expect you to have we're not going to put the same expectations of you the dealership puts on the shop. So if you have to go out and spend all your own time all the time, we're never ever going to pay you to ever learn anything. It works a little bit different for us, thankfully. We get treated a little better than a lot of these technicians do at these dealerships. But you still need to have initiative, and you still need to put some effort into learning. Part of that's these weekly trainings that we've been doing. We're trying to help y'all with that. But there's also another side that we expect from y'all. We keep mentioning read the submittals, look at the product data. This isn't something, oh yeah, we'd like it if you did it. Oh, it'd be ideal if you did it. We're expecting you to actually do this. And so just an easy way to do it would be, first thing in the morning, you get out on a job site, you open up the submittal for the job you're on, spend 2, 3, 4 minutes just going over one single product data sheet. I'm not saying read the whole submittal, memorize the whole submittal, but say today I'm going to read about the smoke detectors, and I'm going to go through that product data sheet of the smoke detectors, and I'm going to learn what's special about this smoke detector. And tomorrow I'm going to look at the pull station and just know about your product. The panels are really, really good ones to look at because there's a lot of limits and capacities and that kind of thing to know. And so I'm going to try to help give y'all a leg up because I know most of y'all haven't been to a factory training. We're not just going to send every single person to factory training. That gets really expensive. But if you do really well with this product data, learning it yourself, taking some initiative, doing well on job sites, and are interested in it, and you've shown the initiative and you've really excelled and done well in other ways, it's going to increase your chances of getting to go to those trainings. And so I'm going to help out today. We're going to go through some Silent Knight, Farenhyt panels. I'm going to talk about some old legacy ones that have just recently been discontinued in the last year or so. So it's still highly probable that you could see them installed out on job sites. And I'm going to talk about the ones that replaced each one of those as well, so you know about the new product. And this isn't an all-inclusive, everything, super deep dive detail about each of these panels, but it's something to kind of get you started and understanding, okay, this is where this panel fits and what it's good for, and this is where that panel is, and some kind of generic options each panel has. So the first one I'm going to talk about is I'm going to work from the smallest panel up. So the panel that we had for years was the IFP 50. This is the same as the Silent Knight SK 5700 panel, except the IFP is the distributor special version, and the Silent Knight version was the over-the-counter, anyone can buy it version. And they work with parts accordingly. The Silent Knight over-the-counter one works with the Silent Knight over-the-counter field devices, and the IFP distributor-only version worked only with the distributor-only devices, the IDP devices. They both work with Hochiki devices because that's kind of a separate thing. So the IFP 50 had 2 NAC circuits, no auxiliary power circuits. So if you're working with something that needs an auxiliary 24-volt circuit, one of your NACs, you have to get rid of one of your NAC circuits to turn it into an auxiliary power circuit. That's really important with the NAPCO Starlink dialers we're putting in now because those are powered by that 24 volts. It's also important when you're thinking about your water flow bell, knowing how your water flow bell is tripped. So knowing how many NAC circuits you have available is important there. The IFP 50 and the SK 5700 was limited at 50 devices. It didn't matter if it was 50 modules, 50 detectors. It was a max, any combination of them, it was a max of 50. So if you have 49 detectors in one module, that's it. Your panel's at 100% capacity. Or you could have 25 and 25 of each. The IFP 50 and the SK 5700 was directly replaced by the SK 6700, except the 6700 doesn't support the IDP devices. If the field has IDP devices, and you look over at the right-hand side of the screen, there's the IFP 75B. The B is just for black. It's the Farenhyt Black series. You can see the panel is black. So the SK 6700 panel, before I get onto the IFP panel, Every spec about it is the exact same as the SK5700, except now it's the new 6000 series and it's programmed by the new software. But it's the same cabinet, the same number of SLC devices, everything works the same. And the 50.1 is clip mode only on the 5700 and the IFP50. That's that SLC protocol like we talked about a couple weeks ago, where clip mode only pulls out to one device at a time. And so it talks to smoke detector number 1, and then it talks to smoke detector number 2, and on and on and on. The 6000 series of Silent Knight panels switch to talk in velocity mode, I believe. Actually, I need to look that up. I'm sorry, I didn't look that up before this. I believe it talks in velocity mode, not clip mode. Velocity mode is where it talks to 10 devices at a time. So it pulls devices 1 through 10, and then it talks to devices 11 through 20 all at once. So it's able to communicate and transmit data a lot faster in between the field and the control panel than the older series was. And so that's something we see on the IFP75B. It is velocity mode only. Also, it was increased on its device capacity. The Hochiki series of SLC can actually contain 75 points, which is where the 75B comes from. And then if you're using system sensor devices, which the new Black series can work with the SK devices or the IDP devices. They're both system sensor lines, but they're, one will be SK Photo W and the other will be IDP Photo W. It can work with both of them, but if you're using SK, every device has to be SK, and if you're using IDP, every device has to be IDP. You can't put both part numbers on the same SLC loop. That doesn't work. But on that one, with the system sensor stuff, you can have 75 sensors and 75 modules to give you up to 150 points on that panel. So it made the panel a little more robust, and it does have S-Bus. Both of these had S-Bus to connect to like the 5496 power supplies or the RPS 1000s that have 6 NAC circuits on them. So you can add more NAC circuits by adding it that way, or we can use control modules to trip conventional power supplies. The other thing the Black Series brought in is it's networkable. Now, we've had a lot of issues with the network, and we don't really like the Farenhyt network. So if we're going to network a system, we're going to recommend that they use the Gamewell stuff, because we have had some issues with a couple jobs trying to network the Farenhyt stuff. But it's a new feature they've added on all their Black Series, is you can connect. The panels are networkable. And then moving up in size, we go from the IFP50 to the IFP100. This one now has 4 NAC circuits, and it maxed out at 100 SLC devices, whether those are Hochiki or system sensor, any combination of smokes and modules, 100 devices max. There's clip mode only. There was an over-the-counter version with all the identical specs. That was the Silent Knight 5808. And the Silent Knight 5808 only worked with the SK series, and the IFP 100 only worked with the IDP series. And again, we see with the IFP 300 over on the right side, that one can work with SK or IDP, but again, you can't mix them. That's going to be constant with all of them. The SK 5808, which was identical to the 100, was replaced with the 6808. And it's still the same panel for the most part. They just did some updates inside of it to make it work with the new software, so that everything's programmed by the same software. And so that's pretty constant with all of the Silent Knight panels, whether it was the 5700, the 5808, or we're about to talk about the 5820. They were all just replaced from the 5000 series to the 6000 series. Over on the right-hand side, we have the IFP 300B. Now, this one still has 4 NAC circuits, just like the IFP 100 did. But you can see your SLC quantities went up quite a bit. For the Hochiki protocol, this is, you can have 254 devices in any combinations of detectors and modules. And you can have 300 system sensor devices, any combination of detectors and modules. The IFP 300B is velocity mode only. All the Black Series is velocity mode only. That's really important to know for retrofit applications. If you have some really old devices that are clip mode only, which they've got to be really old, think like the mushroom head type smoke detectors, then we'll have to look for a different option, or we'll have to replace those field devices as well to make them compatible with the new panel. Starting at the IFP 300 line, not only is it networkable still, but they start having the ECS options. This is the voice stuff. ECS is emergency communication systems. So that's your paging, your voice messages instead of just your horns and strobes. There is a variant of the IFP 300B that is just a panel, just like you see the IFP 100 on the left. And then there is the ECS version, like I have pictured here, where you see the extra switches on the front and the microphone module. That's an optional. It costs more, obviously, but just so you know, it does have that voice option. The next panel on the way up is a panel that they did not come out with a direct replacement of on the Farenhyt side. That's the IFP 1000. The IFP 1000 was identical to the Silent Knight 5820 XL. So if you've ever done a lot of work with Silent Knight panels, chances are you worked with the 5820 the most. This was the most common one ever, and the IFP 1000 was the most common IFP panel ever put in. It had 6 NAC circuits on it. Again, all these panels, Silent Knight and Farenhyt, for whatever reason, they don't like putting a separate auxiliary circuit. So if you want an auxiliary circuit on any of these panels, you've got to get rid of one of those NAC circuits and turn it into an auxiliary circuit. This one had a really, really high SLC quantity available on it. For the Hochiki, you see it's over 1,000 there, and for the IDP devices, it's over 1,500. The 5820 Silent Knight panel had all the exact same numbers, except instead of IDP devices, it was SK devices. Even with all these devices on it, it's still a clip mode only panel. So if you run across one of these panels in like a high rise or something, which I've seen a few of them out there, they're really slow to talk to the whole building sometimes because there's so much going on, and they're only able to talk to one device at a time. So it has to wait for the panel to get all the way to that device before it realizes, oh, you're an alarm. So these panels got pretty slow whenever you started getting them too big. And the 5820 was replaced by the 6820 because it's just continuing that 6000 series. Yeah, like I said, there's no new Black Series of the IFP panel that it replaced. So the 2 pictures I have here on the right-hand side, that's just an IFP 1000 as an IFP 1000 with no voice. And on the left is what the panel looks like when you have all they call it EVS for this panel, emergency voice system, instead of ECS. But those are the 2 ways it would come. The 5820 looked identical, just instead of IFP 1000, it said 5820 XL. And then we have our biggest panel. The old IFP 2000 was replaced by the new IFP 2100. Now, if you remember the SLC quantity counts from the 1000, they were both up above 1,000 devices, with the system sensor being above 1,500. And you look at the IFP 2000, you have 8 NAC circuits now, and this is the first IFP panel that was networkable, but the panel itself could only hold just over 600 devices, regardless of if it was Hochiki or system sensor. So for some reason, they made it where your SLC count went way down, and they said, oh, well, now you can just network, so you add more and more panels to it. We had one school where we used a 2000 that we had a network transponder panel somewhere to help carry the load. That was way up in Montgomery. It was a big high school we did there. This panel did not have a Silent Knight equivalent. There was no over-the-counter version of something like this. It was developed only for distributors like Pyrotex. On the right-hand side, you see what it was replaced with, the IFP 2100. It kept the same power supply load, the same 8 NAC circuits, but you see they fixed the problem with the SLC devices and made it go way up, which is why they didn't need to make a new version of the IFP 1000, because now the 2100 can handle what the 2000 wasn't able to, and I really don't know why that they made the 2000 so limited. Whenever it's system sensor devices, the 2100 can hold 2100 devices. The Hochiki, it holds the 2032. which whatever, I'm not sure why that they're different limits, but you've probably noticed on each one, the two different have different limits. And just like the other Black Series, this is a velocity mode panel. So if you're retrofitting into an older building that has some really old devices, those old devices will probably have to get swapped out. Still networkable, still has an ECS option available. The one pictured is the ECS version. And that's kind of it for our Silent Knight and Farenhyt panels. I didn't include Gamewell in this one because the E3 gets really complicated really fast. So it could probably hold a week all on its own. If y'all have any questions about panels, some other details you want to know, I'd be happy to answer them. And like I said, this was just an overview of the panels. And whatever panel you have on your job site is included in your submittal. And so I really encourage you to kind of read through the data sheets on each of these panels as you see them, so you can understand some deeper details. Every bit of information I got for this slideshow and any other time I talk about products, I just go straight to the data sheet because it has everything I need. It even has the cabinet dimensions. It has what kind of power it needs, all that. So yeah, if y'all have any questions, let me know. And I guess if you don't have any questions, I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here again. And y'all are free to go.